And let's bring in former Senior Director for Counterterrorism on the National Security Council, Javed Ali, for more. Javed, thanks for coming on. How concerned are you about this so-called last-minute crisis? Or is this par for a course in a deal like this?
So, Diane, nice to be with you this morning. And I am not that concerned that the deal is somehow going to fall apart, because so much effort has gone in to creating it and getting both sides to make most of the agreements up until this morning. This is perhaps more posturing, perhaps on both sides, maybe some on the Israeli and some on the Hamas side. But in a worst case scenario, if the deal does fall through, this would be a disaster for everybody involved. And from a U.S. perspective, both President Biden and now President Trump have put their own credibility on the line by announcing the deal. So I would have to think, from the U.S. perspective, they're trying to put as much pressure as they can for both of the administrations, outgoing and incoming, to finalize the deal and start with the implementation.
Now, one of the major issues in the negotiations, as Ian just mentioned, has been the Philadelphia corridor between Gaza and Egypt. Why is that such a point of contention?
So that corridor is an important one because it is up against the Egyptian border, and that is one of the main smuggling routes that Hamas had used for years, if not decades, to funnel weapons, supplies, material into the Gaza Strip. And in the post-October 7th Israeli military campaign, they put a lot of effort into conducting operations in that part of the Gaza Strip and sort of closing off those tunnel networks and choking off those supply lines. So this is a way for Israel going forward, if they're going to station troops along that stretch in the Gaza Strip, either in it or just across the border, to make sure that Hamas doesn't have the ability to resupply and regenerate through that corridor. But I also think Hamas was willing to give that up as a concession, knowing that they have other ways to get material into the Gaza Strip. Now, it's going to be a lot harder with everything else that has happened in the region, and certainly the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria and all the damage done to Hezbollah and Iran's sort of weaker posture. But I think there's still, probably from a Hamas perspective, they believe there are still other networks and other routes for them to accomplish that resupply.
Now, the White House National Security Advisor told George Stephanopoulos this morning that he thinks this deal will hold. But in the meantime, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says Israeli strikes have killed 72 people since midday yesterday, essentially since this agreement was made, even though it's not finalized. Why keep striking if you've just agreed to a ceasefire deal and are on the verge of finalizing it?
Yeah, this is one of the tragic aspects of the negotiation, is that it is not finalized from the Israeli government side, and it still has to go through this ratification process with the cabinet. And Ian's piece before talked about all these sort of delicate political maneuvers Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to have to go through just to get the ratification. And in the meantime, the IDF is going to continue its military operations against Hamas. And there is, I said on a segment yesterday with Kara Phillips, there's still a sizable element of Hamas's fighting capability that still exists. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed to destroy and eliminate Hamas. So as the hours go by until that Israeli ratification of the deal, which I think will happen, that this gives Israel time and space to continue striking Hamas. And unfortunately, that probably also means Palestinian civilians have been killed in the crossfire.
All right, former Senior Director for Counterterrorism on the National Security Council, Javed Ali. We appreciate your time, Javed. Thank you.
Thank you.